Hello there, and welcome to this Women's Rugby League World Cup first round review. I'm your host, Super Saiyan Blue Lucario, so grab a cup of tea and join me as we dive right into the first round of fixtures in this year's tournament. Firstly, Group A. England, as host, played newcomers Brazil. I expected a comfortable win for England, and they were even more rampant than I thought they would be. Brazil lost possession in the first set, and England very quickly punishing the naive start, with Caitlin Beavers crossing in the corner. Tara Stanley soon got in on the act before the impressive Courtney Wingfield-Hill scythed through the defence to further increase the score. England were truly running rampant early on and perhaps became guilty of overplaying a little bit as a number of unforced errors started to creep into the game. They bombed numerous chances on the left edge through knock-ons and forward passes. Otherwise, it could have been much worse for the Amazonas. Emily Rudge was in dominant form alongside Amy Hardcastle, both blasting through the defence at will, and Brazil were just unable to live with the pace. They conceded numerous set restarts in their desperation to slow England down. But they did get an opportunity late in the first half after a ball steal gave them possession close to the line. They were held up just short. The lack of game smarts and tactical nous to break England down, they just couldn't capitalise, and that's where I thought Brazil would come undone. I thought they'd be well organised in defence, but just lacked that game knowledge to be able to do much against England on their line. England did add further scores before the break. Vicky Molyneux with a lovely offload sent Hardcastle over under the post, and England were 34-0 up at half-time. They continued to dominate after the break. Hardcastle and Wingfield-Hill both completing their hat-tricks, but Brazil did get a reward for their efforts. After back-to-back penalties, they found themselves in good ball, and a brilliant offload from the first carry saw Natalia Momberg cross over, much to the delight of the crowd. A record crowd for a Women's Rugby League international in the north, by the way. England did wrap up the win, though, with further scores from Tara Jones, Olivia Woods, and it has to be said they looked very impressive. The halves combined well, and the forward pack looked very strong. If they could cut down on the unforced errors, they could really challenge for the title of this year's World Cup. Player of the match is got to go with Wingfield-Hill. Absolutely superb performance. They controlled things at halfback alongside Roche, and they carved Brazil open at will at times. But there were positives from Brazil. They never stopped trying. They put on some big physical hits. Francine Amaral carried herself very well and was a real big handful. Maria Graf tried at halfback to create, and with a bit more game time, I'm sure Brazil will come good. The signs are there, and they have signs of a potentially good rugby league team. They'll certainly learn a lot from this game. Next, Papua New Guinea versus Canada. By now, the rain that started quite late in the England game was hammering down relentlessly, which contributed greatly to the vast number of handling errors on show. Both sides were very physical in the first half, especially in the forwards, as both teams tried to keep a focus on just keeping hold of possession. But it was one of the many handling errors that led to Long bustling over from close range to give the Orchids an early lead. Canada struck back, though. PNG unable to deal with a low kick into the in-goal area, and Woods gratefully pounced on the loose ball. All of a sudden, 6-4. Anyone's game, as it was through most of the first half. However, tries either side of half-time from the fullback Malawi, first taking a very wayward pass before bursting through 3 defenders to crash over the line to give an 8-6 lead at half-time, before, and early in the second half, making a huge break down the middle and just scything them completely open, running 50 meters to score. And at that point, PNG had a 14-6 lead. Laps defending from Canada saw Ravu dive from dummy half before Pakulis dragged Canada back into the contest with 20 minutes to go, dragging a few defenders over the line with her. And all of a sudden, it was only a 6-point ball game. Would Viva's missed conversions come back to haunt Papua New Guinea? The answer would be no. As Canada tired, PNG started to show their flair and began to break through at will, adding 3 further tries in the last 10 minutes to ultimately run out much more comfortable winners than the game itself would suggest. Both sides showed they have enough to challenge England in a contest, but they'll need to smarten up their discipline and clamp down on handling errors to prove to be a real threat. Player of the match is the Papua New Guinea fullback Malaria. She was nightmarish running threat all game and scored some fantastic tries to boot. Now to Group B, New Zealand versus France. It was a really physical start, both packs getting stuck into each other, and the Ferns nearly scored after just 3 minutes, the final pass letting them down. It was looking an interesting contest. Both teams were using the width of the pitch and really spreading the ball despite the adverse weather conditions. They were playing some really enterprising rugby. But the writing was on the wall for France. The Ferns were creating plenty of opportunities, just couldn't quite find that killer pass to get over the line. And while the French did compete in the middle, the speed of New Zealand was beginning to take its toll. But credit to them, they continued to dig deep. And they actually had some sustained pressure on the Ferns line, forcing some repeat sets. They just couldn't quite find a way through. Then, after being caught on the last tackle deep in their own half, New Zealand finally broke the deadlock after 24 minutes in the corner with Bartlett. Another score added after Nichols pounced on a kick that ricocheted off the post, and from there, New Zealand finally had the game under control. Further scores from Hall and Murdoch Masilla before half-time gave the game a much more comfortable look than the performance itself suggested, with it only being 24 minutes before the first points were added. But they continued where they left off early in the second half. Slick hands out wide led to their fifth score of the game before the impressive Racine McGregor put a perfect crossfield kick for her sister to cross over the line. The French refused to give up, much to the delight of the partisan French crowd who cheered them on throughout, but the class of New Zealand was just too much, who added the gloss to the victory with two further scores in the last 2 minutes to wrap it up at 46-0. There's plenty to be positive for France, who competed well for large portions of the game, especially in the middle of the field. Just a little bit more composure in good ball areas, and they could have caused a few more problems. And they'll certainly give Australia a tough game up next. The player of the match for me is Racine McGregor. Her kicking game was a constant menace to the French side, who had just no answer for her, and numerous try assists. The Ferns look good and will take a very good side to stop them. Finally, Australia took on the Cook Islands. Andrew Voss said before kickoff that this Australia side, player for player, is the most talented across all 4 World Cups taking place. Men's, women's, PDRL, and wheelchair. And on this display, it's hard to dispute. The first kickoff being allowed to go dead for a dropout, the Cooks were on the back foot from minute 1, and Australia made them pay. Tries from Polite, Johnston, Aiken, and Bremner in the opening 20 minutes completely blew them away. The speed at which the Gillaroos were playing was nauseating, the passes continually finding their mark, despite the swirling wind and rain. Polite added a second before Shisolka sprinted away down the touchline, and it was 32-0. The Cooks did have a chance close to the Aussie line shortly before half-time, but the final kick wasn't chased hard enough to pressure the Gillaroos, who led very, very comfortably at the break. The second half started promisingly. The Cooks were building pressure on the line before Tuma Makara was unable to ground the ball off a neat little kick from Kiriaratu. The normal service quickly resumed as Bremner added her second. Fumano crossed after sustained pressure finally broke some stubborn defence. The Cooks, they played better in the second half. They just couldn't live with the skill on show from Australia. Robinson crossed to bring up 50 before another 4 tries wrapped up the victory. It wasn't perfect. The Gills did bomb a number of chances, but a lot can be put down to the poor weather and just overplaying a little. A perfect result, though, for Australia, who are now in the driving seat to qualify for the semi-finals. Player of the match for me was the Australian player Aiken. She just ran the show from minute 1 and directed the Gills all around the park in a very classy performance. So now we look ahead to next week's games. Obviously, in Group 1, England comfortably at the top on points difference, with Papua New Guinea also having that 1 win as well. So going into round 2, England play Canada. Canada have to win to stay in the competition. Otherwise, it could be game over for them. And a semi-final is waiting for England should they get the job done. I think it will be a much closer contest than the Brazil game because Canada have a lot more experience. And they showed in the Papua New Guinea game that they might have a few challenges for England to face. But England's skill that was on show against Brazil I think they'll have a little too much for Canada then, so I think they should get the job done. Papua New Guinea face Brazil as well. Brazil, they'll be throwing the ball on. They'll be giving it as good as they've got. But I think the power of the Orcas will again be too much, and we could know both teams going through to the semi-finals after round two in this one if both England and Papua New Guinea get their win. Over in Group B, we see Australia top on points difference above New Zealand, with France third and the Cooks fourth. And a similar situation over here for round two, as we could also know both semi finalists from Group B going into the final weekend. As Australia face France, Australia, arguably on paper, are a stronger side than New Zealand. And while the French did compete against the Ferns, they just lacked that little composure to get the points on the board. If they can sort that out and compete in the middle against Australia, they might be able to post points, but a win might be a bridge too far. The Cooks, they'll have to really step up against the Ferns. They have the power game, but I think just lacked that little bit of gamesmanship in the few times of good ball. They need to be a little more switched on and cut out the mistakes, because the Ferns won't need a second invitation to go through here. So I'm expecting some big wins again for Australia and New Zealand, which could see all four semi-finalists confirmed. We just need the standings going into the final round of fixtures. But that is my review for round one of the Women's World Cup. Let me know what you thought of the games. Did any performances surprise you, or was it as expected? What are you looking forward to for round two? Let us know down in the comments below. And who do you think is going to win the World Cup off the back of these performances? By the way, thank you all so much for watching. I've been your host, Super Saiyan Blue Lucario. And until next time, it's time for me to have a cup of tea.